Here we are in Lightroom. Now the first thing I'm going to show you is how to import photos. So we're in library mode right now, which is just like for looking at your albums of photos. So first we go to the left hand corner of the screen and we click import. And my photos, they're already on a folder on the desktop. So we look around and we look down and we go pick it. We click on the folder and it shows you. You've got buttons here, uncheck all, check all. You can just look through them. You can select and deselect all, whatever you want. But we're just going to import all of them, and we'll just start editing straight away. So I'm just waiting for my photos to all load, and now I can go through them and I can look and I can choose what I want to do. And I already know I've planned this before, so I'm just going to pick this photo here and go to the develop mode. Now the Lightroom is basically set out like a dark room, but a digital dark room. So all of the modes, they kind of represent the different modes of developing. This is where all the magic happens, and you kind of have all the control over editing your photos. So I'm just going to show you very basically how to take a raw photo and just balance the light, balance the exposure, and just make it look a whole lot better, and just get rid of some noise, that kind of thing, basic stuff. So the first thing we do is we look at the white balance. Now if you're shooting in RAW, and it doesn't matter what camera you're shooting in, Lightroom will have options on different kinds of white balance. As I shot this in auto white balance because I was just out and about on the go. So we've got these different options that I can choose from. So daylight is warmer, it's much oranger, and cloudy is too orange, and then shade is kind of still too orange, and then tungsten is just like for indoor lights. It's very magenta, it's very blue, and fluorescent is also very similar to it's all different color temperatures. So for this, I'm actually going to stick with as shot just for this time, and maybe I'll add, this is just a personal choice, just add a little bit of magenta, and I'll scroll down now. Here we have the exposure, which obviously just changes how dark or light your picture is. Now a handy thing what Lightroom does is if you double click on any slider when you're using it, it'll just return it to 0. There we go, just like that. So in this picture we can see, if we look around, that the buildings, they're very, very dark, and this is because this whole photo was shot in sunset, and the sun was setting over here. We can see the sunset there, and in this dark area is very grainy. Now we'll fix that, but the reason that I was shooting like this, there'll be more on this in my other tutorials on actual how to use DSLRs, but the reason I was shooting like this is to it's called shooting to the highlights, which means that there's no overexposed sky. Just anything bright is just exposed properly, and it'll always cause like the darker areas to suffer quite a lot, or more than if you just balanced. But it's always the best way, because when you shoot in a raw file, you can always correct this in Lightroom. So we'll just in order to fix this, we'll just take the highlights to -100, which will just make sure that we're getting the most out of the sky. And then to fix the shadow areas, we'll bring the shadows to +100. Now already we can see now a lot more detail in these shadows, which it doesn't originally look like there was. I mean, it's a vast difference, look. But the thing is, now if we look in these areas, we can see, I mean, I'm shooting on the 7D, especially Mark 1, really doesn't have very much detail in the, it's not very good at dealing with noise in the shadow areas. So that's where noise reduction comes in. But before that, we'll go and we'll set our own custom whites and blacks, and this is all very handy because it gives you so much more control in just changing the exposure and just, playing like that, and contrast, playing with contrast. So here we go. In order to do this, you'll need to hold down the Alt key on your keyboard, or I think it's a command. on the Apple I don't know exactly. So we'll just hold that down and we'll click on the slider and we'll bring it along until we start to see some pixels appear on the screen. Then we'll back just down a little bit and release it, and it gives us our white point. And now for the black we do the exact same thing, but we back down into the minuses rather than plus. So now we just see a few little pixels there. We can leave a few pixels. It'll just give us a little bit of contrast there. So there we go. Already it's starting to look a bit different. If I press the Y on my keyboard, it'll show you the before and the after. So we can see already there's quite a vast difference in this picture. So now we can go down for these parts here. You don't need to worry about the clarity too much, definitely not at this point. And the vibrance is just like an intelligent saturation, and then obviously saturation is pretty clear what that does. So we can just, for the basics, we can just skip these parts here and go all the way down to the sharpening. Now there's kind of a vague rule of thumb, like, you know, for sharpening, and that is if you sharpen 70, you then do noise reduction of about 30, because then and whatever, basically you just need the two of those values need to add up 100 to 100, and that's so that the noise, because the noise reduction removes the sharpening, so just to balance these out nicely. So because I know there's quite a lot of noise, I'm going to sharpen to 70, and we'll then take the luminance noise reduction to 30. That'll do. So now this is the next important thing about sharpening is to mask the image. So don't over sharpen your image. Sharpening is great, but you have to be careful not to over sharpen. But reason masking is so good, if we hold down the Alt key again, if we just drag the slider along, I really only want to sharpen the houses and the bridge, because, you know, we really want to just make this stand out a little bit, look very sharp. And the clouds, we want them to kind of stay nice, and the sky to stay nice and fluffy and nice. So that obviously, when we do this again, I'll do it again for you now. Whatever is black is unsharpened, and whatever is white gets sharpened. So if I just take that around like that, and now there we go, you can see it's just sharpening it nicely. And now we're just going to go down and have a quick look at profile corrections. Very simply, these will just remove chromatic aberration, these little unpleasant lines, like you see these orange and blue here on the skyline there. Just remove that and enable profile corrections, just sort out any issues maybe with your lens, and just, you know, automatically straighten the picture. So we'll just have a little look again and just make sure that our chromatic aberration has been solved. And yeah, it's more or less solved. It's very, very good, just for, you know, that. And now that's basically it. Now we just have a little look at the before and the after again, just to see how far we've come. Okay, so there you go. That's basically how to edit your first photo in Lightroom in RAW.